Good morning, Packer fans, and welcome to your recap of day 3 of the 2025 NFL Draft. I want to again say one more time what a phenomenal draft this has been in Green Bay. Um, every time I watch this draft as a Packer fan, I get chills. It would not surprise me if I go back and I watch this like in the background while I work or do other things a couple times, just because the atmosphere is so Green Bay, so Packer, um, that I love it. I love everything about the fact that the NFL draft is in Green Bay. I would love it if I lived long enough to see another draft in Green Bay. I also wonder, NFL, the fact that the Packers handled this draft so well, could you show some flexibility for the Super Bowl? I know the Super Bowl goes to the biggest and brightest new stadiums, but a Super Bowl in Green Bay would just be an amazing event for the NFL. So I'm hoping the NFL looks at this, maybe sees if they could open up their requirements for Super Bowls, not just for the Packers, but for other teams that are historic that might not have the latest and greatest stadium. On the other hand, I know the NFL, quite frankly, uses the Super Bowl as a carrot to get new stadiums built by owners. Um, I'm actually in Denver, Colorado, and I know that's a big discussion going on right now here locally in Denver about getting a new stadium, and one of the main reasons for that is to get in the rotation for Super Bowls. So it's a reality. I just would love to see a Super Bowl in Green Bay. I thought that would be amazing. So let's go on to the week 2 recap. One of the things that I've really respected a lot of veteran podcasters for the Packers is to focus on supporting the players that we add to this team, even if they're not the players that you initially thought. Now, I give a lot of respect to Aaron Negler of Cheesehead TV. Please check him out. He's easy to find if he's not already in your favorites list. And his biggest mantra is to support the players that are on this team, even if you don't necessarily think they were the right selection. So I'm going to really quickly say I thought the Packers were going to go tackle in this draft. No question about it. It's a significant need for the Green Bay Packers, but I did not expect it to be in the second round. I thought there was some defensive players that still had a first round grade that were available at that pick. I think I would have personally selected Trey Amos, the cornerback, in the second round and look for a tackle in the third round. If you look at my mock drafts, I consistently was taking a tackle in the third round because that's where it made the most sense for the Packers in my mock drafts. So they flipped it here. They took a tackle in the second round. They took a player that was clearly higher on their boards than the rest of the league. And that is okay. All right. If we're going to support this team and support the process of the Green Bay Packers, we're going to support their players. If Brian thought that this player was a second round pick, I am going to support this pick 100%. So I'm turning the page and I'm focusing on supporting Anthony Belton and Savon Williams. Savon Williams, I have a little less of a problem with than Anthony Belton, but again, that's just because I thought there were better defensive players on the board in the second round. But we're turning our page, all right? We're going to focus on these two players. Now, I will say, looking ahead to the final day of the NFL draft, and I'm sure Brian is huddling right now with the team and saying, we need to go defense hard the rest of this draft. All right, we still have 5 more picks in this draft. I would expect, this is my prediction, we're going to see 4 defensive players taken, and we're going to see 1 quarterback taken. That is my prediction for this next day of the NFL draft. I think they're going to go heavy into defense, but I do think that there's room in the quarterback room for 1 developmental player. That's going to be a big consideration because Malik Willis is going to be a free agent after 2025. So we need a backup quarterback to develop and to learn this system. So I'd really like to see them come out of the last day of the draft with a quarterback and the 4 best defensive players on their board. I don't care if it's a corner. I don't care if it's a tackle. I don't care if it's an edge. I don't think it'll be a linebacker because I think we're pretty set at linebacker right now. But those 3 positions, we should be getting 4 players for those 3 positions. All right? So what I want to do now is I want to go to Brian Gutekunst and look at his press conference, get his feedback for what he saw from these players in day 2. I think that's going to be very important. I have not seen his press conference yet, so I'm going to be stopping for commentary as we've done historically on this channel. And then I'm going to look at some highlights for Anthony Belton and Savon Williams and try to figure out their best fits. If I had to predict right now, these were picks for 2026. And for a GM to make picks for the future and not this year is 100% the right decision. So I don't blame Brian a minute for making these picks. We know that at least 2 players for the offensive line next year are going to be free agents, and they're probably going to be too expensive to bring back. So these Anthony Belton is probably going to slide in. If I'm making my prediction right now, without any practice, Anthony Belton is going to be a guard, your right guard, for 2026 for sure. And I think he's going to battle with Sean Ryan to be your right guard for 2025. That's my prediction. I think that makes the most sense. He is going to be a really good guard. He is a fine tackle, but I think he's going to be a really good guard in the NFL because of his size. And if you look at the tape, and we'll go through it a little bit before, but his college team had an unusual offense in the fact that they were really committed to showing the run consistently on every single down. So their offensive line was making moves as if they were run blocking, even if they were passing. So they basically push forward every down, and then they'll come back and protect as a pass blocker. So in many cases, Anthony Belton was put in at a disadvantage because he was pushing forward with his big size and then pulling back to defend. That's going to be very different in the Packers scheme. In addition, if he's playing guard, he's going to be further protected from being overextended by speed rushers because he's going to be in the guard position and not the tackle position. So I think he fits really good on our team as a guard, starting guard in 2026. Siobhan Williams, and we're going to look at his tape. He's an exciting upside player. He is a player kind of in the framework of Deebo Samuels. He has the ability to run. He has the ability to catch. He's Deebo Samuels with unpolished hands. That's how I would describe him. Big, strong, powerful wide receiver. He's the biggest wide receiver that the Packers have right now. Um, and he plays a lot of unique roles potentially in the offense. And I could see Matt LaFleur coming up with some Williams packages to get him open in space and let him use his speed and size to his advantage, almost like a fast tight end, if that makes sense. He has the ability to line up and do some plays in the backfield. Maybe if the tush push is not outlawed, the Packers come up with their own tush push package with Williams. I think that would be an interesting use of him. So let's go to Brian right now. We're going to take a look at Brian and his press conference. And then we're also going to look at what we can do. Look at some of the highlights for some of these two new Packers. So again, we're supporting the process. We're supporting the picks here on our channel. I think I would have gone in a different direction in the second round and maybe taken Anthony Belton in the third round, but we are where we are. And I trust this scouting and coaching staff to make the right decisions far more often than not. So let's see what Brian has to say about this. The acquisitions on day 2, excuse me.
We're able to acquire tonight. Obviously, Anthony's a huge man. He's really versatile, like as you guys know, we really like. I think he's got probably the ability to play all 4 positions. He's never really done any center, but he can probably play both tackles and both guard spots. He's a mauler in the run game. He's very athletic. He really checked a lot of boxes for us all the way through. Had a great Senior Bowl, and just he was one of those guys that. You just never know if you're going to be able to acquire, but he's just got so much power in his body. He just really fit what we're going to do. And then coming back with Savion, it was just didn't think I'd be up here talking about taking 2 receivers, but when he was up there, he was just another one of our staff favorites across the board, and just so versatile, so many different things. I think he's one of those guys that Matt and his offensive staff, just the creativity they can use this guy in so many different ways that it was just we were really excited to get him. So. Again, I think we did some good for the Packers. We got a big day tomorrow, much more picks, and the board's looking pretty good, so we're excited about it.
All right, so let's go back to Anthony Belton there. The fact that he could play all 4, 2 guard positions, 2 tackle positions, and maybe even the center in an emergency situation. The Packers love versatile offensive linemen. They also like to take large tackles and put them into guard. This is something that we know the Packers have historically done. So I think this checks a lot of boxes for the Green Bay Packers scouting and GM staff. So I think this gives us a lot of understanding about why they made that selection. And as I said, with Savon Williams, he can be a unique piece of this offense. And Matt LaFleur is great at scheming people open. I think he's going to do it with Matthew Golden, and I think he's going to do it with Savon Williams. So, even with some lack of production on the edge for our defense was playing so well last year, and most of the starters are returning. And I'm talking about starters at the end of the season. We're not talking about Jair Alexander. He's still a big question mark. In fact, I would argue that the chances of Jair sticking with the Packers just went up just a little bit so far with this draft. I would love to see the Packers find a way to make things work with Jair Alexander at this point. I don't think you're going to get enough value to help your team in 2025, but having Jair Alexander on the field, even if it's as a part-time starter, would be more for this team right now than trading Javon Walker. Jair Alexander, not Javon Walker. I think even if you had Jair as a part-time starter, maybe you limit his reps. Um, Maybe he's on the field in clear passing downs, something like that. I think he does more for you now than trading him for 2025. So let's go back to Brian.
You have a young quarterback that's obviously still developing. All three of your picks so far are on offense and sure seemed designed to help him with his development. How important was that to you, and how much do you think you've accomplished in being able to help Jordan?
Yeah, it really wasn't, to be honest with you, Ryan. It was just kind of how the board fell, to be honest. And I think, his development, we have a lot of guys in-house that I think are going to, develop. The guys that we already have within our roster right now, I think he's developing with. These guys are going to add to that, and it'll be great competition. And certainly we're excited to see what these young guys' roles will be. But that wasn't a thought process going into this draft, so.
Brian, you drafted 2 receivers, but they're very different, right?
Yes.
I mean, the versatility and how different they are, what does that do for you, think?
Yeah, I think, again, both of the receivers we drafted, they are different skill sets, but they're both really versatile as well. They both can play outside, they both can play inside. I know I talked about Matthew last night, but Savion, he's 6'4", 222 pounds. He's done a lot of wildcat running back stuff. He's played inside out of the slot. He can play outside. He's so good in the red zone. I just think he's really versatile. And then we talked about Matthew last night too, and we feel he can do both as well. And both guys have return ability, so it's just receivers that can do things with the ball in their hands is very important to us, and both these guys can do that.
With William.
All right. So talking about Savant and Williams there and the ability to make big plays with the ball in your hand. And you're going to see that. We're going to look at the highlights for Savant Williams in a moment. But I really think that's what triggered this selection at the wide receiver position for Savant Williams. I really see him as a gadget player, and I don't mean that in a negative way. As he develops his receiving abilities, his hands are my biggest concern. But as he develops his receiving ability, I think they're going to find ways to get him the ball in space and let him do his thing. And he in space is a really impressive player. Let's go back to Brian.
He's been compared to Cordero Patterson. Obviously, had Ty Montgomery here a while back who did a little bit both. Tyler Urban was kind of a gadget guy. What sort of role do you envision for him?
Yeah, I don't really look at him as a gadget. We look at him as a receiver. Obviously he's versatile and he can do a lot of things. I do think he can do some of that stuff that those other guys did as well. But I think he's one of those guys we look at as a receiver that can do all the things that we ask. I do think it's going to be interesting how Matt draws some stuff up. When we had Tyler and did some of those things, I thought it was pretty unique how Matt was able to see him and find areas that he could help us produce. And I think this will be the same way.
Hey, Brian, you talked early in the offseason about needing to rush the passer better. One of the ways you could have done that was using a top 100 pick at one, either inside or outside. Why did you not do that? And where are you going to get that extra rush now?
Yeah, like I said, I think I feel very good about the guys we got in the building. We do need to improve with our consistency, but there was times we were pretty dominant this year, rushing the passer. So we got the whole day tomorrow too, as well, to see if we can add any competition to that room. But I feel good about those guys on our football team right now. So again, you can't create stuff. You got to build your board and you got to trust it, and that's the way things fell today.
Brian, what do you?
All right. So Brian was addressing the defensive end position here and the fact that they haven't taken a player yet. Now, I'll tell you what. Once they made that pick in the 3rd round, I said, okay, this year has got to be Lucas Van Ness's year to massively improve. What Brian is saying to me here is that Lucas Van Ness is our guy, and we're going to expect him to significantly improve in 2025. True story. After the 3rd round, I went out and I got myself a Lucas Van Ness signed jersey off eBay. It's on its way to me right now. because as soon as I saw the end of the second day of the draft, I said to myself, Lucas Van Ness, it is boom or bust for Lucas Van Ness this year. And I saw enough from Lucas in 2024 that I think with a full off season as a starter, Lucas Van Ness can make that leap in 2025. So when they didn't draft a rush end this in the first 2 days of the draft this year, that told me Lucas Van Ness is either a boom or a bust this year. And I went in and I bought myself a Lucas Van Ness jersey. It was ridiculously priced, actually. I think it was less than $50 for a signed Lucas Van Ness jersey. And I'm actually buying into what Brian is saying here, where he says he thinks the pass rushers are in the building. Go Pack Go. I'm like, all right, Lucas Van Ness is going to be our guy on the edge in 2025. We need to embrace that player just like we're embracing these new players and rooting for Luke to take that leap in 2025. And with a full off season as the uncontested starter at end, I think he's going to has the potential to be that player. Let's go back to what Brian has to say.
What do you think is Belton's best position?
That'll be interesting. I think, with his size and length, you certainly want to see if he can do tackle, and he has all the athletic ability to do that. I think he's one of those guys that can fit in where he's needed. It'll be interesting how those, we got, with Jordan coming back, and, we're so excited about what he can do, and now adding Anthony. We're just really, I think, really excited about the growth of that entire group, and it really will probably be as we get through this offseason and into training camp, really where Matt and his staff think it's going to be, best for him to train right away. So I think once they get to know him a little bit better through that process, it'll probably shake out that way. But I think he could play all four spots with the exception of center. Not that he couldn't play center, but I don't think we really, we envision him as that.
Brian, I know you.
All right. So Brian is saying, hey, I've got the players. I'm going to let the offensive line coaches decide where he needs to be. My impression is he really focuses on being a guard in the first year with the ability to move to a tackle in the future. So I think this is our guard for 2026.
If
If
that
not sooner.
moniker of Escalade, just what do you think about how he kind of blends the athleticism with his size and just what he brings to the table?
Yeah, I think again, obviously he's got great size and he can move people in the run game. I think when down at the Senior Bowl was my first real exposure to him, and just seeing him and his ability to pass block, do all the things that I think that Matt asked our offensive line guys to do within our scheme. A lot of the movement stuff for a man his size is I think what drew us to him.
What makes you think he can play guard? What makes you think Felton can play guard?
Yeah, first of all, he's got exceptional quickness. He bends very well, and then obviously just his power. Like he can handle those guys inside. He can move them off the ball. He can get across the shade and snatch those guys. And like I said, I think we had a lot of conversations about where we think his best position, like Matt asked, and it's just like whenever you have a guy with that athleticism and that length, you want to start him at tackle, right? And then move him inside. We've done that a lot here, where we've taken guys that played tackle in college and moved them inside. But I think he can play both. He just, because of his size and power and strength and anchor in the pass game, that's why we think he can play inside.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, he has the length to go with that as well.
I think he was like 34 and 5/8, something like that. I think we had him with about 6 measurements between 33 and 7/8 and 34 and 7/8, something like that. So he's a 34 guy. So
Walker and Morgan already on the left side, are there even enough snaps to play him over there, or do you have to start him, like when camp starts, you have to put him somewhere else?
yeah, again, I think that's going to be determined once we get him in the building. Obviously, I think our coaches need to get with him, but yeah, I think if you were trying to have all three of those guys play left tackle, that might be tough, but I think once we get them inside, whether they cross-train him at multiple positions or whether they just stick him in one spot, let him go, we'll see, But like I said, the versatility is something we're interested in.
Morgan's
All right, so I think, again, this has a lot to do with 2026 and not 2025. We have Sean Ryan and Rasheed Walker. Both of them are going to be free agents after 2025. And I do think they're going to be priced out of the Packers market. So my vision for the offensive line in 2026 is we extend Zach Tom. That's probably going to happen right after the draft. I would say within a month of the draft, we're going to extend Zach Tom for a long-term contract. And then Rasheed Walker and Sean Ryan are going to be fighting for their positions in 2025. And in 2026, they'll be moved off of this roster. That's my predictions for the offensive line in 2026. You can go ahead and clip that right now.
Still definitely going to compete at left tackle, or is that?
That's what I envision. I don't see that changing.
Brian, how much of kind of your future planning about the receiver position plays into taking multiple guys? You know, maybe you can keep all 4 of those guys on second contracts, but they're all going to be coming up on free agency soon.
Right.
Does that come into account when you're thinking about approaching that?
You're aware of it, but I don't think when we go into the draft, we try to put too much emphasis on that. We're really trying to build the board with the right values and letting it come to us and follow the board. I think if you get into there and try to make decisions in the draft based on too much on that stuff, you can get yourself in trouble and take the wrong guy.
Right. So we're going to get a lot of Brian from here about following the board, trusting the board. So I'm actually going to move on here, and let's take a look at some of these players that are now your Green Bay Packers. So we're going to look at Anthony Felton here first. Thanks again to the Packers for this great material on these new players. They put this up super fast.
Anthony Felton, tackle, North Carolina State. Go Packers!
Packers fan, is Anthony Felton checking in. I'm excited to get up there. I can't wait. Go Pack, go.
Right. I love the fact that he came out immediately and spoke up for and said he was excited to be a Packer. I love to see that. We saw something very similar with Nate Hobbs. As soon as he was signed as a free agent, he immediately went on the socials and said, "Hey, I'm excited to be a Packer." We see Anthony Belton doing the same thing there. I really like that. Obviously, the Packers want their signees to do that, but it's a really good sign. Right? Let's continue to look at this footage for Anthony Belton. We have just a minute of highlights here from the Packers.
Able to overwhelm with size and physicality, so just play big man football. You can't play through him.
6'6", 336 pounds.
Good blocking there.
So I'm a competitor, I'm a ball player. And I take part of my
Look at him in the running game, just bowling over defenders. That's exactly what the Packers like.
He happens to be a huge man as well. Big doesn't get small, especially when you play up here in the NFC North. He can move people off the ball and tries to bury people if you can. I mean, he's a big man. He plays a big man's game.
You see him being pushed back in coverage, but I think a lot of that has to do with the North Carolina scheme, where they actually require their offensive linemen to fire off as if they're running every down. So I think there's a lot to like about Anthony Belton there. Peter Bukowski, that's not what I wanted. All right, so let's look at some players for Savon. Some plays for Savon right here.
Savion Williams, touchdown.
Again, thanks to Green Bay for this content.
Tackles. Those were the first things that stuck out to you.
Right, look at that open field playmaking ability for Savon. Here you go. That's busted coverage right there. There's a good goal line play.
He's so good in the red zone.
More busted coverage.
He just really seemed to fit what we're trying to do.
So lots of goal line potential here. He goes up. He challenges for catches. There's some running ability after the catch. So I think there's a lot to like about Savon Williams as well. So there's our thoughts on day 2, not game 2, day 2 of the NFL draft. Again, I think we're going to fully embrace these players on our channel, and I encourage all the Packer fans out there to do that. These are our new Green Bay Packers. And looking at day 3 of the draft, again, I think we're going to see at least 4 defensive players. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Packers tried to trade back to get some more picks. But 4 defensive players and 1 quarterback. That's my predictions. It could be a late round quarterback. Hey, what if it's Sanders at this point? We haven't even talked about that. I think that's just a crazy situation right now. But I think we're going to see 4 defensive players taken and a quarterback by Green Bay in day number 3. And we'll be covering those tomorrow on this channel. So please give us a like and subscribe. We're a new channel. We're really trying to expand our reach out to Packer Nation. So please give us a like and a follow as we continue to improve the content on this channel. And we'll see you tomorrow for a recap of day 3 of the NFL Draft. Go Pack Go!